I'd like to welcome everybody to our session today on exploring the human side of AI and its impact on your AP process with our wonderful NSA Plus vendor Esker. So you'll find that this is incredibly leading edge, and I would ask that everybody stay on, please, until the end of the session today because we do have a promo, and we're going to have some pretty exciting things for you today. So next slide. Okay, so these are the topics we're covering today. So a little bit about Esker, and we will have our primary person that's presenting today report that. I'll tell you who that is in a minute. Why Esker's AP automation, um, and then getting to know the Esker AP solution, and there'll be a demo in the middle of the process as well. So I'm Brian Weaver. I'm the VP of Sales here at NSA, and very pleased to welcome our vendor Esker with Chris Graves. So Chris, oh, sorry, a little bit about NSA. Next slide. So for those of you that may not be familiar, I'll cover this kind of quick because most of you folks know who we are. So we've been around since 1984. We were the very first reseller in this particular space with the Infor team for distribution. And in addition to supporting our team of clients with 22 plus consultants, we've also built out our brand called NSA Plus, which is all of our add-on solutions. Esker is one of those and a really great partner of ours. Next slide. So a little bit about Chris. So Chris, I want to thank you for joining us today. So Chris has been in this particular business for over 25 years with the company, and he's helped companies to basically, formulate the AP process and the automation in that particular space. And he's got some great personal attributes as well. So he enjoys hockey and golfing and does a lot of renovation. So that's near and dear to my heart as well. So with Chris, I'll ask you go ahead and please take it away today.
Perfect. Thanks, Brian. Appreciate the time this afternoon. So as Brian said, my name is Chris Graves. I've been with Esker for a little over 25 years. I've been partnering with NSA for the better part of 10 years plus, actually starting with our faxing solution called VisiFax. So for those of you that have been around the SX world for a while, you may know that product already, but Esker is obviously doing a lot more than fax these days because fax, unfortunately, is kind of going away. So this slide here just kind of gives you a sense of what Esker is or what we do and kind of some of the solutions. In the simplest form, we like to say that we automate the office of the CFO. Obviously, these processes impact more than just the CFO themselves, but that's kind of the industry term, and that's kind of what we use to kind of describe what we do at a very high level. Obviously, today we're going to be talking about AP and the AI processes that get kind of applied to that, but we also have other solutions that kind of tie directly into AP, including procurement for creating purchase orders for items you're not buying through your SX or CSD system today, as well as expense management for filing expense reports for your employees. Both of these solutions actually funnel back into AP once their process is complete, so they're very tightly interwoven with that system or with that solution. But you can see we also have other solutions both on the source to pay side and the order to cash side. So if there's other areas of your business where you think Esker might be a good fit, please reach out. I'll be glad to provide you more information on those various solutions. The key takeaway I do want to mention here is, although we're going to be talking about AP, whatever solution you start with gives you not only that solution, but also gives you access to a platform that we call Esker on Demand that then allows you to build and stack your instance of Esker using the solutions that you choose. So it's one platform for all these different solutions. All right, so why automate AP? I've actually heard this at another presentation not too long ago, and it kind of resonated when I thought back to the wholesale distribution customers that I deal with. Because we're seeing a lot of obviously acquisitions in a pretty competitive market space in some cases. So the saying went, it's not the big fish eating the small fish, it's now the fast fish eating the slow fish. And when I thought about that, I'm like, oh, that's the Mako shark, and that's what that's a picture of. So Got a little nerded out, kind of thought back to Shark Week, but the Mako shark is the fastest shark in the ocean. 45 miles an hour is top speed, but it's not the biggest shark, obviously. So that's why I used that picture to kind of hit home on what that saying was. But I think that's a very applicable saying, especially in this market space today. So why automate AP? Went back through a few of our case studies with our customers and in conversation I've had with other clients. These are kind of the top reasons that they're saying that they're wanting to automate the AP process. One, include their business efficiency. As more and more companies are trying to do more business with less resources, that becomes a key talking point, a key thing that they're focusing on. So how can they make their business more efficient? How can they drive those efficiencies with technologies while not asking more out of their employees? And that's a delicate balance that's very hard to walk sometimes. Increased visibility and traceability. I'm not going to say anything bad about Infor CSD because obviously it's a great ERP system, but one of the limitations it does have is it, and this is any ERP, not just CSD, but it's only as good as the information that's in it. So until the information gets loaded into CSD, there really is no visibility to what's happening. So that's where Esker can kind of step in, because with our AP solution, all your invoices get funneled into it. And actually, we give you the visibility then around what's happening on the front end before the information gets into your ERP system. Reducing processing errors. We're not going to get, we'll talk about how AI applies to this, but I can't really, we're not going to have a whole lot of time in the demo environment today, unfortunately, to show this. But really what Esker is doing now with our auto extraction, some of our AI technologies, we're moving your staff away from doing straight data entry to basically doing data validation. So now they're looking at information that Esker's pulled off of the invoices and just confirming that the information is correct. And if the information isn't, they're just doing a simple point and click off of the invoice to show Esker where to pull the information. So we're eliminating a lot of the hand keying, nearly all the hand keying really. And we're also checking for duplicates. So if an invoice has been received by Esker before, processed through the Esker system, and that vendor sends the same invoice in again, we'll flag that as a potential duplicate. So just some ways that we could help reduce some of the errors that you may be encountering today. Reducing environmental impact. This can be a couple different things, but today, we'll see over here on some of the highlights that one of my customers pointed out, they've eliminated 98% of their paper by going with our AP solution. So rather than receiving invoices in via email, printing them out, and then walking the invoices around internally for approvals and that kind of thing, they've eliminated that and they can do that all electronically with an Esker. So that's one way that we can reduce that environmental impact. Also, with our solution being web-based and most invoices being received via email today, we know if you allow your employees to do so, we'll give your employees the ability to work remotely and do their job remote without having to be in the office. So save on that commute time and that the CO2 footprint. Improve supplier relationships. This is a big one. This one actually came about really strong right around the COVID time. So obviously a lot of wholesale distribution companies were in the, found themselves having to do kind of ready time ordering. A lot of the companies that I dealt with, especially in the electrical vertical, for example, weren't able to stock or didn't want to stock wire on their shelving because the prices fluctuated so much. So they needed to make sure that when they got those invoices from their vendors, they were paying them right away so that they made sure that they remain in good relations with their vendors. So the next time they placed an order, they're able to get the product. So that was one thing. But now with the AP solution, the focus has moved more from making sure they can get the inventory to making sure they can qualify for better terms with their vendors. And by paying their vendors on time and making sure that they get those invoices paid in a timely manner, they can go back and ask for those early payment discounts. Improves employee satisfaction. There's a ton of companies that I deal with where those poor AP staff are staying late, working weekends, especially towards month close, because they have to get these invoices entered in. And with the Esker solution, they'll reduce the amount of time that's required to get those invoices entered into the ERP system and into CSD. So the reduction in time on average across all of our customers is between 60 to 70% as far as time reduction. Some customers are quite a bit higher than that. Some are a little bit lower than that. But again, that's a general average across all of our customers. Reducing operational costs is kind of a big one, but that actually ties into a lot of what we're talking about already. If you can improve efficiency so you don't have to hire people, that reduces your operational costs. If you're able to get the early payment discounts from your vendors, that reduces operational costs or goes towards reducing operational costs. If you can improve employee satisfaction so you're not losing employees, you're not having to rehire, retrain, that sort of thing, that reduces operational costs. So there's a lot of other these factors that actually go directly to that piece. The ERP investment, like I said, CSD, obviously a great ERP system, but it can only do with what the information that it has. So what we want to do on the Esker side, or on the Esker front, is making sure we get that information into the ERP as quickly as possible so that you can leverage that investment, that significant investment you've already made on your end. And greater processing speed. I talked about that earlier on. The average across all of our customers is about a 60 to 70% reduction in entry time on invoices, but that still is a fairly high check mark as far or high requirement for many customers that we talk to. And there's other reasons as well, but those are the top ones. And then these are just some highlights that I pulled out of a recent case study for another wholesale distribution company that we dealt with. Again, I said that they've already eliminated 80 or 98% of their paper. They're actually achieving touchless processing for 75% of their non-direct PO invoices. So basically what that means is that their invoices that are coming in, 75% of them are going directly into their ERP system and not having to be reviewed by AP because of the AI technology that they're using on the Esker side. They were able to improve their invoice turnaround to 3 days. I don't remember what they were initially, but I think it was closer to double that, 5 or 6 days, if I recall correctly. Strengthen supplier relationships. So because they're able to respond quicker to inquiries and turn around their invoices faster, they're able to improve those relationships they had with their existing vendors. Better employee morale, thanks for the reducing the time of, or the number of invoices that needed to be manually reviewed on their end. Those people on the AP team were able to find to do other things within their role that gave them greater satisfaction, made their job more enjoyable, and then enhanced visibility. So, I mean, this is one case study from one customer that pretty much checks all these boxes that we talked about here on the left. So as much as technology is great and AI is a wonderful thing, there are some things that I like to tell my customers to consider. First, technology has to be about people, right? There's a change in the workforce. There's a change in the mindset that employees have. I think if we look back to the 70s, 80s, early 90s, the mindset of most employees was that they were going to get in at 8 o'clock. They weren't going to leave until their job done. Doesn't matter. They're kind of married to their job. That mindset has shifted a lot. And now people are looking at the work-life balance, and the work-life balance being more and more important on the job that they select. So if you give them the technology to do their job more efficiently, to make sure that they can get that better work-life balance, the likelihood of you retaining that employee is going to be much higher. But to that, the AI also has to be kind of looked at as an intern. So what that means is AI has a really great knowledge base as a floor. So it knows kind of what to do at a minimum. It's kind of like a recent college graduate, right? They don't have a lot of experience in the workspace particularly, but they have a foundation to build off of, and that's really what AI is. So, but as you train AI, as you start to leverage it and start to utilize it, it'll actually grow and become smarter, and it'll actually start to automate a lot of the tasks, and it gets really good at automating many of those standard tasks quite easily. But there's always going to be that last mile fit. There's always going to be a piece that technology just can't do for whatever reason, and you're going to need those people on your end to make those final decisions on the invoice. And that's what Esker allows you to do. Bring those invoices in, train up the Esker system to process your invoices as quickly as possible, and then allow your employees to make those final decisions on invoices that do need to be touched before they get loaded into your CSD system. So as far as what our AP solution comprises, it obviously has the ERP integration with CSD, and we lean on NSA to help us with that piece of it. So, so if you have questions on the integration, that kind of thing, the NSA team can help address those. But the second piece here, the capture and route, is really, the capture is really twofold. So one, it's obviously extracting information off of invoices once they're received in the Esker system. But the other key piece here is we're not going to ask your vendors to change the way they're doing business with you today. So if they want to invoice you via email with a PDF attachment, great. If they want to send you a postal mail piece of invoice, fantastic. You can scan that into Esker. We can handle that. If they want to send it via EDI, yep, great. We can bring those into Esker as well. We've also had many customers that are now, their vendors are now asking them to log into a portal and bring down that invoice and bring those into to process. Esker can automate that as well. So we're not limited as to how you're receiving invoices today. We just need to know how you are receiving them so we can open up those channels on the Esker side. Then once we receive those invoices into Esker, our AI technology will start to auto extract much of the information off the invoice. So we'll be able to capture who the vendor is, the vendor number, invoice number, invoice date, that sort of thing. And based on the data that we're extracting, we could then determine who we're going to route the invoice to for approval. So many companies I deal with will have AP specialists dedicated to a subset of vendors, maybe alphabetically, or what we might call white glove vendors, where those are the bigger vendors that you want a specific person to handle. Or it could be broken between PO versus non-PO invoice. However you have that broken down, we can build out those routing rules into the Esker system and make sure that we get those invoices into the correct people's hands. The third block here, and we'll touch on this a little bit in the demo today, is the verification interface. So again, Esker is bringing in the invoice. It's going to pull much of the information. It will actually do the 3M matching on a PO-based invoice, etc. But there is that last final piece where you want somebody on your end, at least initially, to review those invoices, so we make sure that the information that Esker is pulling and doing the match on is correct before it gets loaded into your CSD system. For those invoices that require it, both PO and non-PO, we do have workflow capabilities that are available. So we can route in non-PO invoices internally within the organization for final review and approval. We can also route PO-based invoices back from AP, maybe to the buyer with any questions. And then the buyer can actually initiate a conversation from within Esker to the vendor to see if they can reconcile any sort of disputes or discrepancies that they can't resolve internally. The key takeaway on this is, regardless of where we are in this phase, from the time that we receive the invoice into Esker to the time that we post the invoice into CSD, Esker keeps a complete audit trail of everything that's happened to that invoice. That includes the workflow component, and that includes your buyers reaching out externally from your company to interact with your vendor. That entire communication chain becomes part of that audit trail. We also have a lot of KPIs, reports, and dashboards that are part of our solution. As I mentioned, CSD is fantastic about providing you metrics around what happens with the invoices once they're in the system. We provide the metrics around what happens before they get into CSD. There is a mobile app available in the Esker system. The mobile app is used primarily for the workflow component for the approval of non-PO invoices. So once AP reviews it, they kick it over to the approvers. Those approvers can bring up that invoice on the mobile app. They can see all the pages of the invoice, how the invoice was coded, etc., and then interact with AP if they need to change the GL coding or anything like that. And then the final piece is the supplier portal. The supplier portal is just a way for your company to be able to give insight into your vendors, where they can log in and they can see near real-time status, what the status of those invoices are. Have the invoices that have been submitted to your company been received? Has payment been issued? If so, what was the payment amount, the check number, the transaction ID number, if it's an electronic payment, etc. All that payment information can come over and be displayed in the supplier portal. So I'm not going to go through this whole slide because we're kind of limited on time. I know, and I will be conscious of that. But again, the key takeaways here are two things. One, we're not going to change the way your vendors are doing business. As I said, we don't care how you're receiving invoices. We just need to know how they're being received so we can open up the inbound channels on the Esker side. The other piece then obviously is there is data that we're going to need from your CSD system, because the key here is we want AP to kind of shift from working inside of CSD to doing everything inside of the Esker system, and make sure that everything that's done in Esker validates to make sure that the data is clean, the invoice is clean and ready to post once it hits your Infor system. So to help with all that back and forth, the replication of data, as well as ingesting the output file that Esker generates, and also sending an acknowledgement back from CSD into Esker to confirm that an invoice does in fact post, we do work with NSA to make sure that connectivity back and forth works successfully and flawlessly. I'll save that for later, but you might have seen a little snippet of that. We'll get back to that. But, so let's jump into the demo system today, and I'm just going to show you some of the ways that AI is utilized to help your AP team kind of expedite the processing of invoices. So bring this over. So what you're looking at here is the home screen of the Esker system. Right now I'm logged in more as an AP manager, but this is some of the metrics that we're starting to collect around your AP process right now. So this can all be fine-tuned. There's a design mode that you can go into by clicking this little pencil icon, and you can actually, on your own, add new counters if you want to. If there's something you want to display here, you can add another counter. You could delete a counter if you don't want somebody to see certain information. So you can create a profile or a view that's specific to the person logging into the Esker system. And you can create as many as you want, because Esker is not user-based, so you can give access to anyone and everyone that might need to see anything having to do with your invoices. An example of that is when your auditors come at the end of the year, and they need to see all your invoices for calendar year 2024, you could actually grant them access within the Esker portal. So the only thing they can see is in fact those invoices from last year. But anyway, in my case, I've got this set up so I can see a split between my PO invoices and non-PO invoices. Again, that's that AI looking to see if the invoice that was received has any sort of reference to an internal PO number. So we know immediately if it's a PO or non-PO based invoice. This is just the queue of invoices that have been assigned to approvers. So these are ones that have been come into AP already, have already been reviewed, and now have been moved off to an approver for final review before they get loaded into CSD. Invoices on hold. This is actually something that our AI technology also does. And so it kind of saves time on your AP side of things from trying to find paperwork. So if a PO-based invoice comes in, and we know that it's a PO-based invoice because of the invoice type that's in the CSD system as part of that data record that we're getting over from CSD, and we have the invoice, we have the PO, but we're missing the goods receipt, Esker can automatically place that invoice on hold. So if I click on that on hold bucket, you can see that the reason that I'm waiting or that these are on hold is because I'm waiting for that goods receipt to arrive. Once I get that goods receipt, or once that gets loaded into Esker, that invoice will automatically kick out of this on hold queue and will go back into the PO invoice queue or route it off to the correct AP specialist for review and processing. So that's just one way that the AI technology can save your AP team some time. Over here, we can also identify whether or not that vendor provides your company any sort of special early payment discounts. And if so, we can start to pull those into a separate queue so you can make sure to pay those quicker and can claim those discounts. Likewise, we can also show you if you're facing any overdue fees if you don't get invoices paid. So you can see what the financial impact may be of not paying those invoices, these 64 in this particular case. Then on the bottom half of the screen is just some of the reports that I pulled out of the reports tab on the Esker system to display on the home screen here. So you can look at things like invoices that have been paid on time, average processing time by vendor. This is a big one because this is hard to track in any ERP system is how long is it taking you to AP to process an invoice from each of your vendors. So, you can look at something like Coolwood Technologies that's taken a really long time, where MJ is taking a far less amount of time. And hopefully with the time savings we're providing your AP team, they can do some more research into why it's taken so long to process these invoices from Coolwood Technologies, and then work directly with that vendor to see if there's a way that they can reduce that time. And then you can look at things like average processing time by month to make sure you're trending down, getting as much efficiency as possible around your process. But there's a ton of other reports we provide, and there's no limit to the number of reports you can build. So I'm not going to go through too much of this, again, just in the interest of time. But Esker provides you with about 3 pages of reports right out of the gate. And again, you can create as many new reports as you wish. So as far as how the AI is utilized, we'll take a look at a few examples here real quick. So the first example I'm going to bring up is one from AT&T, which is obviously a non-PO based invoice for a phone bill. And when I open this one up here, this is that validation screen that I was talking about earlier, where I can see the invoice. I'll give my system some time here to catch up and Teams to catch up as well. But what you'll see on the right-hand side is a copy of the invoice that I received from AT&T. Across the top, I've got all 6 pages of the invoice that was received. If this came in via email, I'd also have a copy of the email message here in case there's any sort of special instructions. But you can see Esker's already identified who the vendor is. We've got the vendor number. This is master data that's coming out of your Infor system, so we can do the lookup to pull back the information necessary to post the invoice in CSD. We've pulled the invoice date, and we're actually, if you click on these fields, we're showing your AP team where we're pulling the data from. So we're highlighting that data, and then we're also showing what we've read the data to be. So we turn the word January into the number 1 in this case. And then the invoice amount. So now we've pulled all this information, and this can be clicked on either with a mouse, or you can tab through this as well, just to kind of confirm that the information is correct. But in this case, we're saying, okay, well, great, we've got this 30260 we're being invoiced from AT&T for, but how do we want to allocate that money? How do we want to divide this up and assign it to the correct GL codes? And down here, this is where I would go through, at least initially, to tell Esker exactly how that's going to be, what dollar amount I want to assign, what GL code I want to apply to, cost center type, and even tax. That's another field that's over here further to the right. But once I do that, I can save this assignment template, and then I can go in and load this assignment template next time. So if I create a phone charges one, I can just load this, and there we are. That balance is now gone because the 30260 has been allocated. The only thing I had to do is click on a button, and that's all taken care of for me. The other thing you didn't get to see, because I hadn't scrolled far enough down, is more of the API or the AI workflow. If I scroll down here right now, the only person that's assigned to review this is myself, the AP specialist. But as soon as I load this assignment template, because of the GL code that's being used in my case, Esker's automatically saying, wait a minute, Kate has to review this invoice before it can go into CSD for posting. So what Esker will do is we'll send an email over to Kate, say, hey, Kate, you've got this email due, or this invoice to review. And then she can click on the link in the email or bring it up on her mobile device, review the invoice, and then select to post the invoice into CSD. The other technology that will come into play if I were to post this invoice and then bring up another AT&T example is a lot of times Esker will have a technology applied called last used, where it'll automatically suggest that this allocation be done the same way as it was last time without actually having to load the assignment template. That's just another way of it even being more, allow your team to be even more efficient when it comes to processing their invoices. So that's the non-PO example. And again, we can go into more detail on kind of how we're extracting that data and that kind of thing later on. But if we go over to a PO-based example, then we'll bring up this one here for London Postmaster. This is a PO example. Obviously, it says PO invoice up here. And what we're actually doing is looking for an order number on the invoice. And we found this. This is reference to the original purchase order number that was used to purchase the goods. And you can see that we've captured that right here. What Esker does then is we grab this information off the invoice. We then look into the data tables we're getting from CSD, and we are bringing over all the order information. So here's the header information for that order. And then if I click on the view items, I can see all the items that are on that original PO as well. So this example would be either a partial receipt or maybe like a blanket order or something like that, where we're only getting a portion of the goods are actually received on that particular order. So now that we have the order number, we can grab the original PO data and we can grab the goods receipt information out of CSD. And then Esker does the three-way match. Now, in this case, what we do on the line item level is we will highlight in this light green color whether or not each line item is a perfect three-way match, meaning the invoice matches the invoice matches the goods receipt, and the goods receipt is either equal to or less than the values that are on the original PO. And what I mean by that is you can see that I've got 100 front wheels, 100 back wheels, and 250 bicycles that I'm being invoiced for, which matches the goods receipt. That's fantastic. So I know that I'm being billed for what I received. But if I scroll over here a little further, you can see how many of each item that I've actually ordered. So this is just a partial shipment on that original PO. So as long as that quantity and the dollar amount on the invoice are less than or equal to what was on my original order and it matches the goods receipt, Esker says, yep, that's a three-way match. This invoice is good to pay. So again, the AI technology coming in, doing the matching, making sure that everything matches up. This is actually one of those invoices that I mentioned a little bit briefly earlier on that could be approved for automatic payment. So Esker will start to track how many times invoices for London Postmaster come in that have a perfect three-way match, did not require any sort of involvement from AP prior to posting. And if it happens enough, you can actually go down here to the processing options and select automatic posting for this vendor. So this is, again, fully under your control. You make the decisions which vendors you want to apply this to, and it's on a vendor by vendor basis that you make that selection. Once that box is checked, if another invoice from London Postmaster comes in, and it's a perfect three-way match just like this one, it'll go directly into CSD and nobody on your end will need to review it. We've kind of looked at the opposite extremes. AT&T was one that needed a little training initially. London Postmaster, everything hit perfectly. The one that's kind of in between is one here for Acme Supply. And this is what's going to be more common once you're live with the Esker system, where the invoice comes in, we pulled most of the data here correctly. Anytime Esker does not think the field is correct, it'll highlight it in this red box. So if I was to change this value here and click off it, you can see now that I have a balance. So that's a bad example because I already had a balance there. But any errors that Esker identifies, it'll either flag it with a red box like this, which is a hard stop, meaning I cannot do anything further until that error is resolved, or it'll be an orange box or a yellow box, which is just be a visual warning that there's a potential issue. But in this case, it's saying, okay, I've got $100 more on that invoice than was on my original PO. why. And if I go through this invoice and look at the line items, they all match. There's nothing, pricing, quantities, everything matches there. The reason for this $100 discrepancy is because I'm being charged shipping that was not on my original PO. But this could be tax, it could be a tariff, it could be anything like that. It could be just something that did not appear on the PO that is now on my invoice. So I can do a few things here. A lot of our customers are now asking us to put a tariff or a freight field at the header level here that we can hard code then to a specific GL. Or your team can simply go down here to the lines and at the end, add a line at the end and add the non-PO line item. And then they can just put in, shipping. And then show Esker where it's pulling the data from. And then go ahead and code it out. So the only thing I typed in was shipping under the description, but I still clicked on it to show, and I could have actually clicked on that too. I didn't even have to do that. I could have just clicked on the field here and actually clicked on the word shipping and have it pulled down. So theoretically, I wouldn't have had to type anything. Even at the GL code, if I wanted to assign it to a specific GL code, I can just start typing it and Esker will give me a list to select from, or I can click on these three dots and do a browse out to find the correct GL code. And then obviously cost center and tax as well, if that's applicable. But once that is selected, once you've done the coding and everything that I need to do, that invoice balance is now resolved. I don't have any more red boxes on this invoice. I can go ahead and post this into CSD. So again, the bulk of the work has already been done. Esker's captured everything else correctly. The only thing I had to do was resolve this shipping issue. Now, I mentioned before, Esker does have the ability to initiate workflow. I duplicated that, deleted it, but it doesn't matter. So what that means is that if AP sees the shipping charge and is not sure whether or not shipping should be invoiced or should be paid on this particular invoice, they can launch this button up here, which will now launch a internal communication that they can add the buyer to. So they can start a chat with the buyer. They'll type in a message here and the buyer will actually receive an email and they can respond to that inquiry right from within the Esker system. So you can start the back and forth between AP and the buyer to see if they can resolve or answer why they're getting charged shipping. If the buyer doesn't know and doesn't have an answer for it, or they say, no, we should not be paid shipping on this particular invoice, it should have been covered by the vendor, then AP can go and actually assign the invoice as part of the workflow section. They can assign this to a reviewer and put this send it over to the buyer group. And they could put a note in the workflow like, should we pay shipping or some sort of designation, some sort of note. So when the buyer gets it, they're reminded why they're getting this notification, why they're getting this invoice. And they can also annotate this if they want to get really fancy. They can draw a highlighted box around the amount and that kind of thing. So anyway, the idea is that AP then can route this off to the buyer and they can actually set this invoice aside until the buyer gets back to them with either a yes, go ahead and pay the shipping, or no, don't pay the shipping. The vendor will send us a new invoice, or whatever sort of instructions they receive. But again, the key takeaway here is from an AP perspective, I did very little as far as data entry. I'm now handling the errors and processing the errors and handling the exceptions, not keying in all the other data. We've talked about invoices. I'm going to flip the script a little bit. And we're going to talk about statements as well, because this is another powerful utility that Esker provides. So with statements that come in, assuming that all the invoices for a particular vendor, in this case MJ, are running through the Esker system, Esker can also help with statement reconciliation. So when you get those statements from your vendors, Esker will go through and say, hey, I've seen this invoice, I've seen these, I did not receive this fourth invoice. So it'll remain unmatched and won't actually have a line item there because that never made it through the Esker system. And oh, by the way, these dates aren't correct on this particular statement and this dollar amount is off by a penny. Is this okay? Is it not? But this is automatically doing the matching and then will allow your AP staff to reach out to the vendor to figure out what might be a mismatch or to get this other invoice. Again, if you're not doing the matching on the statements, you may not know you missed this invoice, and that could have an impact on your vendor relations. Then the final piece of technology that's been recently added to the Esker solution is the Synergy AI bot, which is down here on this button. So This can actually be used for a lot of different things, including searching the Esker documentation or something like that. But it can also be built or used to build reports. So I can say like, show me all AT&T invoices. And then rather than having to run the report or build a funnel or some sort of a filter on the Esker system, I can just ask the Synergy AI to do that. Here's all my invoices from AT&T that I have. And then I can say like, add counter. And what this will do is it'll actually allow me to add a counter to my dashboard if I want to do this. So if I hit add to dashboard, it'll refresh itself. And then when it comes back up, I'll actually have to log back out and log back in for it to display the number, like this big number 0. But if I click on this count of AT&T invoices, I can click on that, and there's my AT&T invoices. So again, another piece of AI that Esker has recently adopted or added to our solution that's allowing our customers to be able to get the bigger bang out of the Esker solution, and also get some more insight into what's going on in their processes. So that's kind of an overall look at how we're utilizing AI. And again, kind of the human element to it as well. I mean, AI is not going to do everything. We're trying to use it as much as we can to reduce the amount of touch from the AP staff side of things. But we realize that there's going to be that last mile that somebody on your end is going to have to review the invoice before everything gets loaded into CSD correctly. So that's what we're trying to automate, that portion of it. So we're taking the easy stuff off their plate and allowing them to free up their time to do more value-added tasks, and maybe even work with your vendors directly, like I said in the example between MJ and Coolid, to see if there's a way that you can better those relationships. All right, so back to the PowerPoint here real quick. I will let you know what the promo is that we're offering. And it is this, a $25 gift card to Starbucks if you were to schedule a follow-up call with NSA or Esker prior to June 30th. You have to mention that you're on this webinar, that you attended it or saw it on the recording to qualify for that, but we'll send that out. So you just reach out to your NSA rep, and then they'll let me know you reached out to them, and we'll get that gift card sent out to you. That's all I had, Brian. I know we kind of flew through that. I'm sure there's some questions out there, so I wanted to leave a little bit of time to address
Yeah,
those.
absolutely, Chris. So thank you again for the presentation and also for the promo as well. So folks, please make sure you take advantage of that. Again, it's valid through the end of June. So that gives you about 45 days. So, please contact NSA and or Esker to go ahead and get that scheduled. So we appreciate that. So as you develop your questions, and I do have some already to ask, but please enter them into the chat. I do have a few takeaways that I, kind of jotted down as we went through the webinar that I'd like to mention. So the case study that Chris had mentioned, I mean, it really shows a very high ROI on the solution in a number of different ways. So I think that's incredibly powerful. I love the fact, Chris, that you mentioned AI should be viewed as an intern. I think
Mhm.
that's very astute. And, again, it's self-learning, right? So any intern comes in not knowing a whole lot, and that makes a lot of sense. I love the complete audit trail as well that's there. So I think that's very important to, the different distribution accounts we have. The single screen dashboard I thought was incredible because it shows you in one view, basically all the key activity that's going on that you've got. And then the focus on exceptions, we mentioned that as well. So I think that's critical also. You don't have to manage the minutia. You basically focus on the exceptions, and it's all about efficiency. Before I get to the questions, and this isn't something I plan to do, but I know we got Brian Jones on with us today, and Brian is really our key lead on integration with CSD. And Brian, as long as you're here, I thought I would just offer up to you if you have any final thoughts or comments you want to make before we get to Q&A. Right, I might have Brian muted there. So here's some of the questions that we've got. So Chris,
Yep.
one that I've got. How does Esker process direct ship orders where our company doesn't receive a good receipt?
Yeah, that's a great question. So on the order type file or the open PO files that we get over from CSD into Esker, there's going to be a designation as to whether or not it's going to be a direct ship order or not. Um, and if it's a direct ship order, then we realize we're never going to get the goods receipt. So we will actually process or do a two-way match on those particular orders. So we'll match, or the invoices rather. So we'll match the invoice to the original PO, and we'll just know that a goods receipt is never coming. So if it's a PO based invoice for goods you're receiving, we do the three-way match. If it's a direct ship, we do a two-way match.
All right, that makes sense. And another question we have is, what's a typical implementation look like, and what sort of ongoing support does Esker provide?
Yeah, so generally what will happen is once we sign the agreements and we kick the project off, projects usually take about 8 to 10 weeks to complete, start to finish. What we'll do is we'll assign it to one of our implementation teams here at Esker. You'll be assigned an engagement manager, a solution architect, and a few other helpers. And then we'll also engage with NSA and Brian Jones and his team. So generally, on the front end, the initial portion of the project will be completing the integration between the Escrow on Demand AP solution and your CSD system to make sure we're getting that data going back and forth. But once that integration is complete, then we will have your AP team jump into what we call Esker University or Esker U to do some self-guided trainings, and then go right into the Esker system and start doing some testing in a dev environment, obviously not in production, but the key here is we want to make sure that the integration piece is working, that the information that you need to process invoices is showing up correctly in Esker, et cetera. And we want to make sure that we're doing a test from start to finish to make sure everything is working the way you want it. We can obviously make some changes in the Esker system, et cetera, but that we really want your team in there as quickly as possible to give us instant feedback on what's working, what isn't, et cetera.
Well, Chris, that
Uh,
sounds,
yep.
I'm sorry, go
Oh, go
ahead.
ahead. Nope. The only other thing I was going to say is that during that period, we're also going to ask you to identify maybe your top 10 or 20 vendors so we can get those trained up. So at time of go live, those vendors already have as much learning and training behind them as possible. So we automate the processing invoices for them right out of the gate.
Excellent. That sounds like a pretty quick implementation process, so that's awesome.
Yep.
So, yeah, can you talk a little bit as to how the solution is priced?
Yeah, so like I said, we're not limited by number of users. It's unlimited user licensing. So we're just the major pricing as far as the ongoing costs is linked to the number of invoices that you're processing per year. So it's capacity based. So we can run some reports out of CSD to let us know what you did last calendar year. Maybe add a little bit of a buffer in there, like an extra 10% or whatever it is to accommodate for growth over the next year or two. And then we'll base the pricing on that.
Right, great. And this is a great question. Yeah, obviously, there's a lot of consolidation in the distribution industry, right? So,
Yeah.
this question is, what is the process of acquiring another company running a different ERP system? Would Esker be able to integrate with it as well until we can bring them onto the CSD platform?
We can, yeah. So we're kind of ERP independent. We don't really care what the ERP is. Obviously, with CSD, it's nice because we have the partnership with NSA. So they really help to fast track these projects by bringing that expertise on the CSD side of things to do the integration. We do have some other partners for other ERPs as well that we can enlist similar to NSA. For other ERP systems, though, the customer kind of has to work with us on getting those files replicated over, et cetera. But yeah, like I said, we're pretty much ERP independent. We don't run into too many ERP systems that we can't integrate with.
All right, terrific. I don't see any other questions at the moment. I will give folks one last minute here to go ahead and please enter any questions they have in the chat if they do have any. But I'd like to thank you, Chris, for your time today and for a very informative presentation. I'd like to remind everybody of the promo and please reach out to NSA and or Esker to take advantage of that. And again, this is a high ROI solution. We've seen that with the case study and some other things. So really appreciate everybody taking the time to attend today. And Chris, thank you for taking the time as well from Esker to go ahead and give us a presentation. Since we have no other questions, I'm going to go ahead and give this a wrap. And I'm going to give everybody back 15 minutes of their hour. And thank you all for attending.